Hi. It's very early in the morning, sort of. Not as early as when I got up, but it is 7:21, and so you are going to see the sun getting higher and higher throughout this. I thought it was better to start after the sun started coming up instead of before. Okay, knocking this out. Um, I updated this PowerPoint, just finished updating it this morning. A lot of it is going to be just blah, but I have some interesting whatchamacallits, news stories, articles, links, that kind of thing at the end. That's what I had to do a lot of updating on. So this one is going to be about power and global warming, which should actually be referred to as the climate crisis. If you watch a few documentaries, you'll understand that's why they're doing it, because this is one of the most misunderstood things, and part of why I want to make sure to do this. As this slide says, heavy on texts and facts, sorry, but when you're talking energy and some of this, you can't get away from the heavy text kind of stuff. So, first thing I always ask a class about this is, do we need power? The answer is no, because we like power. We would love to have power. Power is how we have things like internet, laptops, lights, air conditioning, fans, that kind of thing. However, when the electricity goes out, unless you are on some kind of life support system, you don't die. If you've ever gone camping, you didn't need power, you didn't die, so we don't need it, we just want it. So this entire thing is to look at our options on how we get power, how we actually obtain the energy that we use. And I'm going to be slightly distracted as usual, but I closed the door, and one cat is in here with me and one cat is not. And the one who is not seems very confused and he keeps just looking at the window. So it's kind of funny. Fang, he's my baby. He's the one who's in here with me. He doesn't care. All right, tar sands. If you watch this one documentary by Leonardo DiCaprio called Before the Flood, he actually shows you about tar sand oil. So tar sand oils, there's a whole bunch of it. Second largest oil field in the world. Supposed to be decent at keeping the price down, blah, blah, blah. Here's the one that gets me is, oh, look at that. I can use my little laser pointer thingy again. I like this thing. Right here. This is the one that a lot of people will sit there and quote over and over and over again, is that it gives jobs for Native Americans. I want you to remember this for this page. These are the cons. For each of the energy sources, I'm going to give you pros and cons, because there are pros and cons for every energy source, not just the non-renewables, but any energy source. So that's part of what you have to look at. All right. So here are some cons. The first thing I want to point out is because I told you to pay attention to the jobs for Native Americans. This is why there are jobs for Native Americans, because it is their ancestral lands. So it's not like they're saying, hey, here, let's help these people out. It's, hey, we're going to, hire you as we destroy your land. It's not right. My personal opinion, I don't think our consumption should be more important than ancestry. So there you go. Anyway, it's also huge in emitting greenhouse gases. It's getting to be one of the highest areas for this. You are completely destroying a lot of habitats in order to do it. And the pipeline, if you look at the very bottom one here, if you have kept up with the news over the past, 5 years or so, they've been talking about the Keystone Pipeline, the XL Pipeline, this huge pipeline, bring it all the way down. It's popping holes, having leaks, different things like that all the time. And a lot of times they don't even know that it's leaking until they just notice that not as much is coming out on the other end as they anticipated. And in that amount of time, we have just dumped oil all over something. It's not a good thing. It's more habit. It's kind of like somebody who sits there and chews their nails. It's not a good thing to do. People just are used to it, and so they don't say anything about it. Yeah. To get the oil out of the tar sands, a lot of water's used, like a lot. And this is extremely important because we don't have a whole lot of water to give, and we're going to cover that at the end of this PowerPoint. All right, coal. Well, we have some pros. We already have the whole industry. We've had it for a very long time, so you don't have to build really. We've got it. You get a whole lot of stuff, and it's pretty friggin' cheap. There you go. Cons. There's a lot of cons to coal. I highly recommend you take a moment to read through all of these at some point. I am not going to read everything on this PowerPoint. It would take friggin' forever. And again, you are literate, and I despise PowerPoints where people just read word for word for word for word. But anyway, lots and lots of cons. It is non-renewable. We are going to run out. It puts a lot of crap into the air. Very bad for respiratory. And in our current situation, if you actually overlay high usage of coal and other air pollutants with the amount of COVID-19 breakouts, you will see that they're pretty closely related. They're like right near each other because it's not good. If you're dumping a bunch of particulates into the air that muck up your lungs, you're going to have a lot more unhealthy people. Clean coal, I don't know if anyone's heard of clean coal. That was a big thing they were saying a few years ago. They're still trying to say it, but this is clean coal. There is no such thing as clean coal. Clean coal just means we say that we are going to collect X amount of the air particulates. They don't even know what they're doing with any of it. It just means basically a big fancy filter. It's not clean. It's still burning. It's still being released. It's just kind of being dissipated over more area than it currently was. Burning coal also lets mercury and other heavy metals out into the atmosphere. Mercury is already bad enough. Mercury, I covered it briefly in the overview thing when I talked about Minamata, because that's what was getting dumped into the water. It basically eats holes into your brain. And if you look at even just a can of tuna fish at this point, it warns you of the higher levels of mercury, and it tells you if you're pregnant, you might want to reconsider eating this food. That's pretty bad. That's how much mercury we've put into the environment, and burning coal is one of the ways we have done this. And this is the one most people don't realize right here. High levels of radiation. I bet most people did not know that a coal plant could actually release more radiation than a nuclear plant. Let that one sink in. Definitely not a healthy source. Then we have our natural gas. Notice a lot more pros for the natural gas than the previous ones. Doesn't mean it's great, but there are a lot more pros here. Relatively inexpensive. It's the cleanest of all the fossil fuels. Burns efficiently. You have a lot less carbon dioxide coming off of it than coal or oil. And you can use it in a bunch of different ways. You don't have anything just left over. So like where coal is putting all the ash everywhere, that doesn't happen with natural gas. This is why a lot of people use natural gas. It seems to be extremely helpful. Cons. There's a lot of cons with this too. Again, it is non-renewable. We cannot replace this. I mean, technically, all of these can be replaced, but it's going to take, thousands to millions of years. Natural gas, it says millennia. The actual, like oil, takes millions. So technically, it can be renewed, but probably not in the lifetime of humanity. So time to get off of it. This does still burn off some carbon dioxide, or lets off carbon dioxide when burned, just not as much as the others. We know it's explosive. That's why we use it. That's how we're able to use it. A lot of stuff for moving it around, blah, blah, blah. But here is the issues. These are what we're having major issues with right now. is it's called fracking. This is where they're fracturing the earth to obtain more of this. Since it is non-renewable, we're having to keep searching for more and more and more. And fracking, they break open the top of the crust, and then they like shoot water in there to force it open more so we can reach areas we weren't able to before. This is one, using a lot of our water, which we don't have extra of, and polluting our water. It also then is disrupting the crust, and we're having a rise in earthquakes. Areas that never really had earthquakes before because of what we are doing to the planet just to get this gas. That's kind of a big con there. Biomass, bio for life. So this is basically taking living matter, or what had once been living matter, and burning it. That's pretty much the gist. Totally renewable, because as long as we have stuff growing outside, and you get to see my yard so you can see we have stuff growing. As long as we have stuff growing outside, we have biomass. Generally low cost, lots of it all over the place. Low carbon, not carbon free, but low carbon, cleaner than the fossil fuels, and we can convert it in a bunch of ways. You can even use garbage, basically. There are certain countries, I never remember when I'm doing this which country it is, but there was a country that actually had become so efficient at this, they are importing other countries' garbage to run their electricity. Imagine that, having 0 landfills so you can give everybody electricity. That's phenomenal. Okay, but they do have cons. Everything has cons. Requires water to grow. If you're growing plants, in order to use them for your energy, obviously that's going to be land. If you have land that you're like, oh, I could grow more of X and that will give me more energy, then you're probably going to be clearing off your trees, because the trees are you're not going to be able to grow them fast enough to support this. When they use things like corn, it then also competes with the food industry. Wouldn't it be cool if I could tell you the exact year? I want to say, I think it would be cool. You wouldn't. I don't think you'd care. I want to say it was 2012, somewhere around there. I did research in Mississippi, armadillo research at Yazoo, Mississippi. There's a nature reserve there, and I got to stay there while we studied armadillos. I was there to just help and like catch them and stuff like that. And oh my gosh, do they smell. Oh. But anyway, while I was out there, I could not get over how much corn there was, just corn everywhere. And I asked the professor at the time, I asked him about it. And here's a fun little tip. If anyone has ever seen Go Diego Go, the spinoff from Dora the Explorer, Go Diego Go was all about animals, and this teacher, Dr. Lawfrey, he's an animal behavioralist, and he specializes in armadillos, and the producers of Go Diego Go contacted him to ask him details about armadillos for an episode, and they were very upset when he kept telling them that armadillos don't make a noise. Totally unimportant, but why not? I don't know, I find it interesting. Anyway, when we were there, I could not get over how many fields of corn there were. I knew there would be corn all over the place, but this was insane, and I asked him about it. And he told me at that time that there used to not be so much corn, that it used to be corn here, and then this crop here, and this crop here, and this crop here, because he had been doing armadillo research at this location for a very long time. And he said that when they started having more of the ethanol and stuff like that at the gas stations, that a lot of the fields were replaced with corn in order to support that business. So there you go. They do actually start clearing off other stuff, and so some people have less food because they're more concerned with making enough corn in order to make that. Long story. Well, here you go. Here's another unrelated one. Well, kind of unrelated. It's totally related, but has nothing to do with what we're covering. When I was there, I watch a lot of horror movies. I love horror movies. And there are so many horror movies where you see someone who goes into the cornfield, they're running away like this, and then they get lost, and you're like, dude, just follow the path, get back out. You ran a straight line, turn around, run back. So I had to know. So this one girl who was there, a grad student, her name was Kier. And I'm sorry, that just made me realize I really think it was 2007 that I did this. I know, doesn't matter, but I had to remember that I was an undergrad, not a grad student when I did it. Anyway, I get out there, and I had her drive us to one of the cornfields at sunset, and I walked a straight line into the cornfield until I couldn't see her truck. Then I spun around a couple of times, and as the sun set is when I did my spinning, and then I looked, and the moon had risen and there were stars everywhere, and I could not figure out where I was. I tried to find the truck. It was really disturbing how easy it is to get lost in a cornfield. And then I started yelling to her to turn the headlights on so I could try to find my way out. And she turned the lights on, and it still took kind of like an echolocation thing. I would call out to her, she'd call out to me, and I'd have to try to follow the voice to find my way out. And I discovered, oh, that's why all these people die in the cornfield in horror movies. It was pretty creepy. So then, of course, when I came home, the first thing I did was I ordered the movie, one of the versions of Children of the Corn, and I sent it to her while she was there, because why not? Yeah, she hated me for that, but it was so funny. Anyway, let's continue. Nuclear energy, pros, lower carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So this is cleaner for that purpose. Relatively low cost for running it. Notice I say for running it, not a low cost for building, but we're talking pros right now. You can make a whole lot of power for this in this one area. Yeah. And notice their pro is that the waste can be reduced. It's not gone. We don't know what to do with it. So here's our cons. And I'm just going to point this out. Cons continue. There's a lot of cons for nuclear energy. It costs a lot to build the place to begin with. Once you start it up, you have to keep it going, because even if you decommission it and you're no longer adding to it, you're no longer making energy from it, you cannot just turn it off, because you have this crap in there that if you don't keep it cool is going to explode. That's kind of big. Clearly easy target for terrorism. If any group wants to damage a nation, any nation on the planet, this is the easiest thing to target, because you blow it up and you wipe out a whole group, whole area. This is also still non-renewable, because you have to use uranium in order to run the nuclear reactor. Without the uranium, which is an ore, which is non-renewable, you're going to run out. Right here. Waivers are required to limit liability of companies in the event of an accident. That means they sign stuff that in case there is a meltdown, in case there's a leak, in case anything goes anywhere, the company is not in charge. It's okay. It's not their fault. The government actually has to pay for this, not the company. I have a major issue with this one. Whew. All right. Now, as they're trying to get more uranium in order to do more nuclear, that is, again, the indigenous people. This is taking over the native land. It's destroying environment and culture in order to fuel this need. Oh my gosh, this one right here. Right here. The waste. Nuclear waste lasts anywhere from 200 to 500,000 years. What happened is, when they realized, hey, if we split this, we get all this energy, they said, but what are we going to do with the waste? And they're like, oh, our scientists are smart. They'll figure out something to do. And they just ran with this, and they kept doing it without anyone knowing what to do with the waste. Currently, we still don't know what to do with the waste. There's nothing to do with it, because you can't deactivate it. And so we have just been shoving it inside mountains, shipping it elsewhere. If you're shipping something dangerous and the ship sinks, which does happen, There you go. That's actually where a lot of our oil spills have come from, and we'll cover that in a different presentation. But no way to know what to do with this. No one can do anything with it. So we are basically being the proverbial child who's just stuffing stuff under the bed and saying it's clean. That doesn't work. So not a good thing. All right, tidal power. This is literally harnessing the energy from waves. Emission free. There's no emissions. When you build a plant, it can last 100 years. High efficiency, you can get a whole bunch. It's very predictable because your tides are very predictable. It's based on the moon, you know? Okay. They're not cheap to build. That's one of their cons. They're very expensive to build. Very location specific. There's only very particular locations you can do with it. It impacts the local environment. So again, not the best. Yeah. Wind power. This one is honestly one of my favorites, but of course there are cons here too. So clean energy, no fuel, you don't drill, you don't frack, you don't transport, you don't do anything. You just put up your tower. Renewable and sustainable. I know it's not going to have wind blowing every moment of the day. That's why you have to have a little backup thing, and we're getting there. That goes under the cons. Wind power you can use almost anywhere, like almost anywhere. And where it says low life cycle for the carbon footprint, it means it takes less than a year to pull in as much energy as it took to build the stuff to begin with. So that's pretty cool. Right here, wind, inconsistent, unsteady, unpredictable. You don't know. You have no idea how long it's going to blow. Unless you were like on the coast, you're doing this around the ocean area because you know there's usually a sea breeze, or places like, I think it's Chicago that's called the Windy City. Places like that, obviously, wind power would be great. Here, if you look behind me, there's not wind happening. There's like maybe a tiny breeze. Nope, not even that right now because I don't see the trees doing anything at all. So there you go. They do have entire wind farms, entire fields with these just put up to harvest as much wind as possible. If you ever drive cross country, and I highly recommend it one day, it takes like, I don't know, 73 days to get across Texas. Clearly not that long, but oh my gosh, if you're driving across Texas, it's going to feel like that. So many wind farms. It's really cool. The little picture in the lab for SGSC has one of my pictures I took of a whole bunch of wind turbines set up in Texas. It's pretty cool. But anyway, generally located in the rural areas, and so some people say, oh, it's ruining a beautiful picture. I kind of think power lines everywhere ruin beautiful pictures, and I think those giant things pumping up oil ruins a nice picture, so I don't worry. Some people complain of noise from the turbines. One, notice it's some, and two, they've actually been working on making them quieter. Each generation of these being made tend to be more efficient and quieter. Wildlife impact, here's the big one. When they first started putting up the wind turbines, they were not really being very smart about location, and they didn't track things like the migratory patterns and stuff like that. And I think the idea was, oh yeah, the birds will see it, they'll move. Yeah, there were a lot of bird deaths the first bit of time, and here it's saying bats have experienced fatalities, but I mean, if you hunt with echolocation, yeah, that's going to kind of affect you. And it does impact the nighttime temperature and weather for what's right around there, but it's because it's, you know, doing a constant pump. Oh, those were the cons. One other con that I realized I did not put on here is the parts of the windmill, if they have to decommission one, like take it down because they weren't able to fix it or they're replacing it, they're huge. These are huge parts, and until they get better at how to recycle all aspects of it, that's one of the things. And I read somewhere recently, there's this thing that a lot of the places are using, and I say this thing because the word is just not coming to my mind, because I just learned about this like 2 days ago. And it's to keep the motor basically from overheating from the constant, rotation. And you have the serious environmental people who will spend the extra money to guarantee that they're using all the proper stuff. Then you have the people who just want to say, hey, look, we're green, so we're making all these, but they're cutting corners so they can do it cheaper. These cheaper ones, which are more than the good solid ones, are using something in order to help keep everything cooled down, which is disturbing because the gases that are getting released while being used for this are not good for the environment. And so we really need to have better regulations on making this and accept the fact that it's going to cost more to do it right. But we've had a history of let's just do it as cheap as we can, and that's part of why we're in the issue we are. So I'm just hoping we can, get better. Anyway, solar photovoltaics. This is just solar power. Photo is light, just so you know. Clean energy, no combustions, there's no mechanisms, there's no machines, there's no moving parts. It's just we collect the light. You can't see it from here. I can't see it from here. But on the top of my roof over here, I have 4 panels. I want more. I just don't have the money yet. But I have 4 solar panels. And I like to track the stuff. Let me see if I can open it right now, and then I'll hold it up. That way you know what it is that I'm sitting here looking down on. Anyway, no pollution, totally quiet. Most places on the planet have sunlight. You do not have to have it only from one direction. The sun is the sun. If you can get a sunburn, you can harness the energy. That kind of thing. The hottest days, that's why I got mine. Mine is hooked up to my air conditioning and stuff. The hottest days, you're going to get the most sunlight. Those are the days you're going to be running your air conditioning the most. So this way it helps. Okay, let's see. I almost have this. Come on, load, I say, load. I have an app that does my solar, so this is showing you my solar panels, the 4. And then I have my energy production, and that's the one I'm waiting to show. Well, the sun is just coming up, and it was updated 22 minutes ago, so it's not showing anything. So let's go to yesterday. There, see? That's showing the amount of energy I did yesterday. And that's showing how much energy each of my solar panels did yesterday. So I think that's pretty cool. I really enjoy being able to look at this and keep track of it, because a few years ago, was it 2000? I think it was the end of 2017. We had a solar eclipse. It was either end of 2017 or beginning of 2018, but we had a solar eclipse, and where it showed those little spikes to show my energy usage, it went, and so I could actually see exactly what time we had a solar eclipse. That was pretty cool. Anyway, here's our pros. Lots and lots of pros for solar power. This is my number 1 go-to. I love the solar power because, hello, the sun just keeps getting your, may as well use it. Cons, of course there's cons. You're not going to have solar power at night. It's just all there is to it. If it's super cloudy, you're not going to have a bunch of solar power. You'll have a little bit, but not a lot. It costs a bit to get it started up. That's why I only have 4 panels. You have to have something that stores it so you can tap into that. So you have to have batteries or an alternate source. I am still hooked up to the city because I don't make enough energy for my house. Tesla, the company that makes the cars, also has something called Tesla Tiles, and that's what I desperately want to get one day. And I've made reference to it before, but they put it all over the roof of your house. It looks just like regular roofing, and it's pulling in energy all the time. And then they have designed these huge batteries. Well, they're huge in how much they hold. They're not really huge for looking at, but they batteries that after you have continued to store using your solar power, it will hold up to, I think, like 2 days or something worth of electricity. So then even if all the power goes out, your refrigerator stays on. Everything stays on for you. And then when the sun comes back out, it's still replenishing. I think it's great. But that's one of the cons too, is because making the batteries is not the best. And batteries eventually have to be replaced. That's not good. That's one of my biggest cons for solar. I really wish I could find a way where you didn't have to do the batteries, but hooked up to the grid, that's one way, but that's like the only other way to do it. There are entire solar fields. The state of Florida a few years back had vowed that all of their rest areas and their travel centers would be run on solar because, hello, Sunshine State, they've got plenty of sun. Possible aesthetic issues. That's one of the big ones that a lot of people hate. They don't like to look at them, which is why things like the Tesla tiles might help make a huge difference. And this one, this is the biggest one right here. It's a growing technology, and so a lot of times they just get better and better. And anyone out there who is ever like, okay, this is the perfect computer, this is the one I'm going to buy, you buy it, and then like 1 month later they update it, they have a brand new one, and you're like, well, crap. Same thing happens here. So you might have the best of the best, and then 1 month later you don't have the best of the best anymore, but that's technology. All right, so what does all this mean? I made reference to greenhouse gases. So that's what we're going to talk about here, is what that actually is. What greenhouse gas is a gas that makes the earth like a greenhouse. A greenhouse, when you hear a greenhouse, most people think, oh, somewhere where you can grow plants. Yay, this is good. But the reality is, the reason a greenhouse is able to grow plants year round is because of what it is made out of. It lets the light come in, it lets the heat come in, but it does not let the heat go back out. That's why a greenhouse can grow plants in the middle of winter, because it traps all the heat. That is what's happening here. So we have the sunlight pushing everything in, but then we have these gases that have like formed a bubble around the planet, and it's not letting them go back out. That's what's causing the warming. So carbon dioxide, I know you've heard that this is bad. Everybody hopefully has heard this is bad. They actually have carbon alarms in houses because carbon monoxide, which is one, and carbon dioxide are extremely poisonous. They will kill you. Every time you burn something, you're letting the carbon back into the atmosphere because we are all organic beings. Every living thing is carbon based. So if you burn something, it's releasing the carbon back out. Plants are so helpful because they breathe in the carbon dioxide. So they take in the carbon dioxide and the sunlight and some water. They run it through their system, perform photosynthesis, and then they exhale. They let out the oxygen, a little bit of water down there, and they make glucose, but that's how they feed themselves. So the more plants you have around you, they're sucking up the carbon dioxide, the bad gas around you, and they're letting out the oxygen, which is good for you to breathe. So, yay. I have known people who would sit there and say it's okay to sit here and just, let off all this carbon dioxide. I'm just feeding the trees. And I used to point out, anyone who's ever been to, I used to say Cece's Pizza because it was the easiest one to use as an example. Anyone who's ever been to a buffet, which are probably not going to be around anymore after this, coronavirus, but anyone who's ever been to a buffet, imagine being told you have to eat all of that. You can't stop when you're full because it's just going to keep coming onto you. Eventually, you're going to die. You will have so much you cannot consume anymore, and that's we've gone up here where the plants are here. I'm not saying they're going to choke, but they cannot consume all of the carbon dioxide because it's just not physically possible. Just like the average person cannot eat everything at a buffet if they're also still cooking. Eventually you have to stop and it's going to pile up, and that's what's happening. Methane, this one's huge. Trying to decide. I used to point out in classes and everything, humans make methane. It's basically a fart. That's what it is. This is why a lot of living creatures emit methane. It's just a gas from your body. It's also natural from other areas. It's a natural gas, but it's toxic. It's flammable. The part of the issue with a bunch of our glaciers melting and everything is it is releasing methane that had been trapped under the ice. And each time one of those is released, one, it's highly flammable. And you can actually look it up, just Google it. And you'll see people who they crack it open and they hold a torch there and you see whoosh, just burns straight up. It's a great gas for burning, but it's very bad for our environment, for our air, for our health. The more cattle we raise, the more land that it takes to raise them, the less trees we have to absorb the carbon dioxide, and the more methane we're throwing into the air because cows are letting off a lot of this. Plus, a lot of this comes from landfills. So when you see the big piles of garbage and they're moving it along, when you go by and you're like, oh my God, that smells horrible, this is what you're smelling. So the bigger the landfill, the more the methane, the worse for the environment. Nitrous oxide, yep, laughing gas and whippets, that's what this is. A lot of things we do release this into the air, and this also is one of those that kind of hangs up there and blocks the heat from getting back out. Then we have fluorinated gases. I'm getting distracted because my kitty's just being all kinds of cute. We have hydrofluorocarbons, parafluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride, all these things. These are synthetic. We made these in order to do stuff in the industry. Some of these we used in order to try to replace things like chlorofluorocarbons and hydrofluorocarbons, because if you ever heard, well, you have to have, because I covered it in the overview, the stuff that was eating up the ozone and making holes in the ozone, that would be these, the chlorofluorocarbons, the CFCs. So then we created a lot of stuff so we could still make what we wanted and use what we wanted, but not be destroying the ozone layer to the degree we were. But these ended up being also very bad. But, you know, humanity would prefer to just adjust something instead of not do something. So, you know, All right. Hydrofluorocarbons. These are refrigerants, aerosol, propellants, solvents, and fire retardants. It's going to be like air conditioning, things like that. I am not going to be a hypocrite and say you shouldn't use air conditioning, because I get insanely cranky if I get too hot. I am going to use my air conditioning. But I keep it set higher than I would prefer. I have fans set up in order to circulate the air more, so I don't have to have my AC as low as I would like it. And I installed the solar panels in order to try to control the energy consumption from my air conditioning. So I tried to be as responsible as I could while still, you know, having a pampered butt and having air conditioning. However, this is the big one I like to point out to people. Most people are either this person or they know this person, where they're complaining that their car is not cooling enough, and so they go and they buy a can of coolant from, I don't know, Walmart or somewhere. And then they just keep shooting it, the Freon. They keep shooting it into their car saying, there we go, now it's cooler. I'm actually an AC certified mechanic. I used to fix trucks, as in, like, you know, tractor trailers, 18-wheelers. And I went through the stuff. I did the training, passed the test, have my little card that says that I am AC certified. I can tell you that your air conditioning system in a vehicle is a closed system. That means you should never be losing any of your coolant. All of this stuff should stay in there. If it's starting to leak out, if you are constantly having to add something to cool it, that means you are letting this out into the atmosphere all around you, and you are part of the big problem. So if you are one of these people, or you know someone who is, instead of going out and buying another can and pumping it into your car, get it checked, get it fixed. Yes, I know it costs money, but I kind of want to keep using the planet, and I want to not die right off the bat because of everything that's happening. So just try to be a little more responsible. There you go. Also, by the way, your brake system is a closed system. So anyone who's having to continuously add brake fluid, that's a serious problem. Go get your brakes checked. Brakes, you really don't want to have go out. All right, that's it for that. Still talking about all the different things. We use it for a lot of stuff. I'm not saying everything's bad. It's just this is one of our issues that we're pumping out into the atmosphere. So if we have any brilliant people in these classes, anyone who's going to try to be any form of or I don't know if you have to be an electrical engineer, but that would help. Any kind of engineer at all, how about try to figure out something we could do other than this to still get what we need? Because we know we're still going to have electricity and stuff like that. We need our circuit breakers. Gosh knows we love our computers. We just need a better way to do things. All right, 2011. Should have updated this one. I completely missed this graph when I was updating everything yesterday and today. 2011 total emissions. Look how much carbon dioxide. That's our biggest one. This year, when we were locked down, when the entire planet was pretty much locked down, it brought our carbon emissions down so friggin' much for a month. And then everybody got right back out there and just jacked that stuff up. Finally, global warming. This is the big thing, what we're doing to cover this, but we had to cover all that so you can understand what it has to do with. Climate change, climate crisis, pick any name you want. I'm going to mention both sides because there's a lot of people out there who don't believe it, but in reality, it's just because you are not comprehending what it actually means. I wish I could think of a really good analogy. Most people know at least one topic very well, and they're always just stunned at the ignorance of other people on this topic. And ignorance is not an insult. Ignorance just means you haven't been taught. So there's a huge difference between ignorance and blatant stupidity. I leave everything up to you. All I am doing is providing you the facts, because facts are facts. That's all there is to it. There's no opinion. There's no bias. There's nothing political. It's just a fact. Kind of like if I take my phone and I let go, it's going to fall. It's going to drop. That's a fact. Same kind of thing. So, vocabulary. Greenhouse effect. This is what I was talking about a moment ago when I explained what a greenhouse is. The greenhouse effect is the overall rise in temperature that the Earth is experiencing because of these greenhouse gases getting trapped. So the sun is still beating in, but the stuff can't quite get out. Like I mentioned, pretty sure I mentioned in the overview when I talked about the ozone layer getting thinner and the hole, and you can track the rise of skin cancer with the hole for the ozone. That is a fact. That's statistical data. You can completely track that. You don't even have to look at the numbers. You can look at the percents, because I've heard other people say, well, we have more people on the planet. Of course it's higher. So go by percentage wise, and you will see it is definitely still higher. And skin cancer, you can't exactly not understand what that is. I mean, a reputable doctor is not going to misdiagnose skin cancer because they test it. Anyway, greenhouse effect is not a good thing. It's not a positive. It means literally these gases are getting trapped and it's overall warming the planet. And the reason I keep saying overall warming the planet is because it does not mean there's no cold. Temperature is a pendulum, and that is one of the biggest, most misunderstood parts of here, and it's the one that I want to scream in people's faces on a regular basis. It doesn't mean you don't have a cold day. When it is really hot here on this side of the planet, the other side of the planet normally is getting a colder part, and vice versa. So like right now, we are towards the end of our summer. Right now, Argentina is very, very cool, cold. They're wearing coats and stuff because they are in a completely different hemisphere. A lot of people have a hard time recognizing that where you currently are is not the only place on the planet. So you have to realize it's completely different things, but it is a pendulum. You can track the harshest winter normally has one of the harshest summers. Be really concerned when we're back like this, when there's no change in between the two. That's when to be scared. Okay, reflectivity, reflective, ability to reflect. This is huge because Greenland and that entire Arctic region is melting. Again, it's a fact, and I'm going to show you some articles in just a little bit. But it is a fact. You can track it. They can see it. We have images. We have people who live there. And if you have ever tested this kind of thing out in real life, you will see when you have white, it doesn't reflect the heat nearly as much as when you have black. That is why some places use the whiter concrete versus the blacktop, because the blacktop, oh my gosh, heats up so fast. Anyone who has ever tried to walk on a beach from the ocean across the sand and then across the blacktop parking lot to get to your car in bare feet, you know very well, while the sand might have been hot, that blacktop straight up burnt the bottom of your feet. It's horrible. That's what's happening. As Greenland and the areas up there are melting, it's turning darker, so it's reflecting more of the sunlight, which is trapping more of the heat, which is making it melt even faster. So, here we go. I need water because I'm about to choke. Sorry, I talk a lot on this one. So, what's the big deal? If you've ever heard of the carbon bathtub, here's the thing. And I am so sorry. I know there's a lot of words here. Here's what I'm going to explain. So imagine you are in a tub with a shower. I always say with a shower because my analogy works so much better this way. We have all, hopefully all, taken showers in our lifetime. If you have longer hair or you live with people with longer hair, you're going to know this scenario better than the people with really short hair or shaved heads. So you're taking a shower, you're like la 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 la, and the water's going on down the drain. Especially if you've just moved in or it's brand new. It's just, you're fine. Everything's fine. Keep going back in there, taking the shower, and then eventually you start noticing that, your feet are still in some water. Sometimes you're going to realize that the water is coming up your ankle. And you're like, why am I ankle deep in a shower? More often than not, you're going to find that all this hair has clogged up the drain. When you pull out all that big old clump of hair, all of a sudden the water goes down the drain. It's not a big deal. If you don't pull out the clump of hair and more hair keeps getting added to it every time you take a shower, the water keeps backing up more and more. Eventually, you're going to end up in a full tub and it's going to overflow, all because of this hair that's in the drain. The hair, and here you go. I have very thin hair. You can't tell, but I am holding one strand of hair. You would think this would not cause an issue, but you get enough of these together and it will back that drain right up. That's what's happening with our carbon. The carbon, when it's clean, when everything's working the way it's supposed to, like the trees and the plants can absorb it, should keep everything flowing right on down that drain. We keep throwing more carbon, i.e. water, into the tub than can actually go out. So think of all the junk we're doing as putting hair down the drain and the carbon as the water coming down. Eventually it goes over. The drain is going to be like the trees. or the ocean, the stuff that actually absorbs the carbon. So the more trees that we remove is hair that we're throwing in the drain. The worse we mess up our ocean and destroy our coral reefs and get rid of marshes, things like that, the more stuff we've shoved into that drain. That's the issue. I hope that made sense to you. I'm also getting distracted because I'm like, holy crap, how long have I been talking? I feel like I've been talking forever. All right, here, where it says sorry, but this is the easiest. I just didn't feel like trying to copy and paste all of these because this is an article, and I'm going to click on it in just a second, that has a whole lot of other links. So this is where I cover myths versus the actual science. So when you hear that somebody says, but blah, 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 this shows you the science that backs it. Now, all of these hyperlinks, oh, I guess I need to get rid of that, don't I? There we go. These are actual hyperlinks. Notice it's a little finger, okay? These are hyperlinks right here. I say these because there's another slide that has more. This is a hyperlink. If you want to click on it, you have to either have this in slideshow mode, like this is, and then it's an easy clickable link. Or if you just open the PowerPoint, then when you click, you have to right click on it and then select open hyperlink. But you get to see all the stuff I was looking up. This is it. If you notice, you have the myth, you have the science. So anywhere it says like, it's the sun, it's not bad, there's no consensus, it's cooling, all of these, just click here and it takes you to the actual article. That's it. That's what I want you to notice. A lot of people, when they talk about the temperature, they say it's only raised a tiny %. This is one of my favorite webcomics. It's called XKCD. I'm going to point out, when someone says it's only a tiny %, you have to decide exactly how tiny does it not matter to you anymore. And the example I like to use, here they obviously used a sneeze. I use poop. Because if you have ever changed a kid's diaper or cleaned out a litter box or picked up after your dog and you got just the tiniest little speck of poop on your hand, you probably freaked out and was like scrubbing them. You're like, ah. And in reality, it's only a tiny % of your entire body. It's just the tiniest bit. But that little bit really, really matters. So I like to point that out. Okay, these are older news links. Again, these are all actual links that you can click on. These are some from right around, I want to say 2014, 2015. Yes, Niagara Falls froze one year. That's how cold it was. So these are there for you to view. These are the current ones, the ones that I just finished updating today. These cover the heat waves so far of 2020. We have Siberian heat wave. Siberia, as in the Arctic, is on fire. That's what this one's about. Right now we have a rolling blackout in California because they have to keep cutting off the electricity for different areas to keep it from overheating because California is also on fire. So it is so hot, people are using air conditioning more, using the energy more, which is overheating the energy system, which is making it spark, which is then setting fire. It's a huge chain reaction. Crazy April weather. I couldn't help it because I remembered while I was quarantined thinking that the weather was not what I was used to for April because we had a lot of colder days. And I'm used to April being a lot warmer. So I was like, So I actually looked up April and I included that. And then we have the US Drought Monitor that was updated, I believe it was on Monday. So very updated links. I highly recommend you take a look at it. It shows you what is happening just this year. And if you still don't think it's a big deal, I challenge you to actually look at the patterns, our weather patterns over the past decade or two. That would be a good idea. If you want to go all the way back through weather history, feel free. That's great. It's just that's a whole lot. But you can watch as it's doing this. Now, when something is increasing, it doesn't mean it never dips, but it means overall, if you do a trend line, that it's overall still going up. That's what's currently happening. What a lot of people have a tendency to do is say, yes, but look at this day. This day does not match that. That happens. That's kind of like if you take a good football player, a good, baseball player, somebody who's really good at sports that overall is known as one of the best sports people ever. Sometimes they screw up. That's life. That doesn't mean that they're not good. It just means they had something that happened that time. Same thing happens for weather. Same thing happens for all of it. Everything. You have to look at the overall. Don't pick and choose your argument. You have to look at the whole picture. And that's one of the big things. So this came from multiple places. These are various locations where I got a lot of the information. See, there's even the XKCD one. I highly recommend, I'm going back here for while I'm talking here, I highly recommend you do your own research and educate yourself. If you believe that we are in a climate crisis, definitely educate yourself with facts so you can explain stuff instead of saying, well, my teacher said, or such and such said. Actually educate yourself so you know what you're talking about. If you really believe it's not an issue, I say the same thing. Educate yourself. Look at your news sources. Who are you listening to? Are you going by memes? Are you always only looking at one source? Because if you look at only one source, that's not actually news. That is one place. If you ask somebody what their favorite restaurant is, and everybody that you talk to says, well, such and such said, that's not the same thing as actually asking 100 different people. That's why I honestly question a lot of times, we're like, voted best in Valdosta. Did you poll everybody in Valdosta? Or did you ask 10 people and 8 of the 10 people said this? You need to broaden your horizon, get more information. Now, here's the big thing. If you truly believe it's all bullcrap and it's fake, convince me. That's what I ask. Convince me. Show me why you say this. Give me facts, because it is not a political issue. It is not an opinion issue. There is no, I'm sure we can agree to meet in the middle. That's not possible, because this is a fact-based thing. It has been tested, retested, proven, reproven. It has never been disproven. So if you truly, truly, truly think it's a bunch of crap, convince me. Share with me true science-based articles, because if you are not science-based, you cannot prove whether or not science is real. Kind of like I am never going to have an atheist try to prove to me what a Christian means, because they're polar opposites. You have to cover each with the actual stuff. So if it's fact, I need fact. So please, if you think it's a bunch of crap, show me why. Explain it to me, but be respectful, because I was respectful to people who don't believe it. I am of the mind, educate, and I am not too old to be educated. I am constantly striving to learn more. So if you truly believe it's all a bunch of junk, explain to me why, and be ready to have a full discussion on it. Because if you just throw one thing at me like a lot of people do online, I'm going to respond, and I expect a response back, not just derailment, because oh my gosh, the crap online makes me so angry. Like, I cannot tell you how angry. I wish people could just actually communicate. And when that's coming from the autistic person, that's pretty bad. But seriously, and I'm getting distracted. There's a really pretty cardinal over there. At least it's not a squirrel this time. Okay, that's it. Clearly this is an important topic for me, so hopefully you got something from it. And please click on some of these links, read them, go over them. You live on this planet, you live in this world, you need to know about it. I guess that's it. I'm finally going to stop talking. I'm going to drink more water and just go and not talk for like an hour. All right. I have no idea what video I'm doing next. Possibly the current topics, because I really am working on updating that one. All right. See you next time.